Hello, and welcome to Tales from a Sex Store. My name is Hazel, and today I would like to talk to you about this story from actually way back at Miss Kitty's. We had a couple of people who worked there. This was before my time, but Billy would know them. And at some point, when he's able to return to the show, it might be really fun to hear his perspective on these folks because they're characters. So these two characters who had worked at Miss Kitty's were anthropologists, and they were going to school at Montana State University. And one of them specifically had gone and done some digs in Africa somewhere. I couldn't be more specific than that. This was, again, before my time. But I know of them because I was a child and my mom was an anthropologist and she was on those digs. So I got to go with. I spent the summer out on these digs, sleeping in a teepee. And my gosh, I remember Cook made the most spectacular tamales. They were they were unbelievable. They were so good. And the whole crew, they had gone out like the year before and planted little willows. And so while we were on the digs, they would bend down this ring of willows that they had planted a year or two prior and create a sweat lodge right next to the creek or the river. And it's a little creek. And anyway, this one year specifically, one of the employees from Miss Kitty's, anthropologist, had done digs in Africa. It was hot. It's hot right now. It's summer, right? Montana's hitting 100+ degrees. And so he was wearing skirts. In Africa, that was traditional male attire, right? This was an expansion of his perspective of appropriate gender clothing, right? Just anthropologically speaking, culturally speaking, having nothing to do with gender play of any kind, gender exploration, gender expansion, just culturally, anthropologically, his mind had been opened to the idea of skirts not being quite gendered the way that they are specifically to the predominant culture in the United States today. And so it's 100 degrees, we're in the desert, and he's wearing a skirt. It was cooler, it was nice, it was breezy, it was delightful, much less sweaty, much more hygienic. And he got in trouble with one particular person who was a lab tech, a mobile lab tech that was hired by the university. They weren't university affiliated. It was a company that was hired by the university to be there to do their lab work, analyze specimens, whatever. So this is a university-funded dig, and this person got upset and threatened to tell the university organizers and try to have the funding cut and cut the dig short, and like really was very, very offended by this. And in solidarity, not for anything that was trans or non-binary, this is predating all of that as far as the discourse in pop culture, in politics, in Montana. In solidarity, the rest of the men on the stig went out, went to secondhand stores, and bought themselves skirts and dresses, and everybody for the rest of the dig wore skirts and dresses, and they were, all of them, astounded at how much more comfortable they were for the rest of this dig, right? And it's just an interesting thing to consider that clothing is gendered to our perspective, and regardless of what the gender has to do with anything, it may not be the most comfortable thing. It may not be the right tool for the job. Why would you want to be warmer than you have to be? Why would you want to be less hygienic than you have to be? Why not be more comfortable? Pushing all of the politics aside, pushing all of the fear-mongering and extra baggage about it, right? Whatever we're bringing to the table are perspectives, our histories, our culture, our society, our religious beliefs, why not just be more comfortable? Why not just be happier? And it doesn't have to be anything, but it does make you think, why is it so awful? It's culturally a perspective. It is not universally a perspective. It is religiously a perspective. It is societally. It is the United States. Wherever you are, whatever you were raised with is not the global perspective. Thinking about other cultures and the effects of that dig. Afterwards, my mom's partner at the time revisited his Celtic roots, and because of that summer, started wearing a kilt again. It gave him access to reconnecting with his heritage and his family history. He even started to do a little bit of research on his ancestry, which is just really cool for him. It all started with this one moment where someone was doing something a little bit different, and that gave him permission to consider and to reflect and to change his life for the better. So, what are we doing that is based in our traditions that is hurting us, that is no longer serving us? Why are we holding ourselves to these restraints? And maybe that's too broad of a question, maybe that's too loaded of a question, but maybe why don't we take a second and think about our automatic responses and see if they do still serve us in any situation? You're boarding an airline and somebody at the kiosk says, "Have a nice flight," and you say, "You too." Automatic responses are baked into the hardwiring of how our brains work. But choosing to be self analytical, to be critical of those responses, to just wonder, why is it the best way? Could I do something more efficient? Could I do something healthier? Could I do something more entertaining? Could I do something that makes me and my life better, that makes you and your life better, even if it's not what's expected? Just because. Why not? What can you do that is not what's expected, but that's better? Why is it normal for a thing to be a thing? Because it's not always better. There was a parable that I heard one time about this family, and their tradition was they always cut the wings and the legs off of the bird when they were doing a chicken or turkey dinner. And this had been handed down for generations. The limbs always got cooked separately. Was it easier? Not really, not in processing. Was it maybe more approachable at the dinner table? Maybe, but maybe not really. That's just how you carve the bird. So the daughter has a new boyfriend who comes to this chicken dinner, and he's curious. He watches all the preparation, he watches the cooking, he helps out. And at the end of it all, he asks, "Why do you do this?" And she's like, "I don't know. This is how my mom did it." So they together go and they ask the mom, and they're like, "So why do you do this?" "It's just the way we've always done it. This is the way my mother did it." And so they go and ask the grandmother, and she says, "Because it's funny. A long time ago, I had a 3/4 size oven and I couldn't bake an entire chicken. And so it became tradition to cut off the limbs before cooking it, because that was how I used to have to do it when I had a smaller oven in a smaller space for a smaller family. It's the only reason." What do you do when there's no real reason for the things that you do, but you're sure that it's the right thing? Just some food for thought, little something to chew on, little something to maybe think about when you're thinking about the things that you're doing. I don't think you have to constantly analyze yourself and your actions and behaviors, but if you catch yourself thinking about a thing, maybe really give yourself the space to sit with it and chew on it. Become your own anthropologist. Let your curiosity and your ingenuity guide you to maybe more helpful or approachable or ingenious or delightful or creative ways of moving through your world. And if you see something that you don't understand, maybe just consider you don't know why they're doing it either. Like, he wasn't exploring gender wearing his skirt. He had just done a dig in Africa, and that was traditional, and it was more comfortable. You don't know other people's stories, but maybe they know something you don't, regardless of that story. Anyway, we're going to keep this one short and sweet. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a delicious day with whatever kind of chicken you decide to carve, wearing whatever sparks your joy and keeps you comfortable out there in this 100-degree weather, and live daring greatly, whatever that looks like for you. Live playfully. This has been Tales from a Sex Store. I'm Hazel. Happy orgasms and mental hugs. Bye.